Shalom, everyone, to Insights into the Weekly Haftarah. This week's Torah portion is Mishpatim. It comes right after the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai. And that was a once-in-history, awesome event. Of course, the Ten Commandments are the basics of not just Jewish moral and ethics, but really world morals and ethics. And then we go to Parshat Mishpatim. Parshat Mishpatim is one of the parshas that has the most mitzvahs. It's just mitzvah after mitzvah after mitzvah, a wide range of ritualistic, agricultural, moral, damages, ethics. It has everything in it. There are three parshas in the Torah that have the most mitzvah. One is Mishpatim, one is Kedoshim in the book of Vayikra, Leviticus, and in Devarim, Ki Tetzei. Those three parshas have more than a quarter of all the mitzvahs in the entire Torah are in these three parshas. The parsha of Mishpatim begins with the whole subject of a Hebrew bondsman or maid, or a woman or a man made bondsman. This is a very complicated issue, and we're looking for the connection with the Haftarah, because there's so many mitzvot in Mishpatim. We can imagine it would be hard, like, well, which Haftarah do we pick connected to which mitzvah? So it's picked, the very first set of laws have to do with a Hebrew bondsman. What does this mean? There are two ways a person could become enter into this relationship of being subservient to someone. Either someone is desperately poor and can't support themselves, can't support their family, and so in modern terms, they enter into a contract that I will work for you for 6 years in exchange that I and my family will be supported. It's really not that far from in modern terms where people sign work contracts, either with companies or individuals, contracts between suppliers and supply and demand, between professions, where a person makes an agreement for a certain salary. They will do a certain job description. So here, if a person is desperately poor, they can, as it were, rent themselves out to be a worker. They have to be treated very well. We don't have time to go into all of the laws, but they have to be, treated very well. And we even have a case here of a man who has children, in this case, a daughter, and he can't even feed them, And so he makes an agreement for her. She's a minor. And with the expectation, though, that she will end up marrying either the person that they make agreement with or the person's son. And if not, then after the period where she is supported, the agreement would end. So that becomes, and I want to add one thing, that there's a second way that a person can enter into this relationship, and that is if someone is guilty of theft. In the Torah, there was no jail system. There was no incarceration. So let's say someone stole, and in the Torah, there's restitution that has to be made. If someone is caught, they have to pay the money back plus penalties. What happens if the person can't? They've spent all the money that they stole, whatever. So the court would force them. In other words, this is instead of going to jail, they would be forced into this kind of contract. Now, it's actually rehabilitation, because the people who enter into these agreements have to be treated very well. And it becomes part of how they fix their situation, rehabilitation. So that becomes the theme of the Haftarah. It's from Jeremiah, the 33rd and 34th chapters, where this is right before Nebuchadnezzar destroys the first temple. We know that Jeremiah lived during the destruction, but for many, many years, he was warning the kings and the people that they had to change their ways. That if not, God was saying that the temple will be destroyed and Israel will go into exile. There were many not moral and ethical things going on, and Jeremiah warned them over and over again. So what happens here is that the word of Hashem came to Yirmiyahu, and this is after Zedekiah, the king. They made a covenant. What was going on was, and this is very similar to our previous class, where the sons of Eli were taking more than their share. They were forcing they were just taking. Here, what was happening is people would enter into this 6-year agreement. In the 7th year, you go free. People were not allowing them to go free. And this was going on for a long time. And Jeremiah was warning them that this can't continue. So at a certain point, the king listened, and they decided they would end anyone doing this. They would stop it, and everyone who needed to be released from these contracts would be released. And they even took a calf and they cut it in half, and they, in a certain way, reenacted Brit Ben Abitarim, the covenant that God made with Avram, where he also took animals, he cut them in pieces, and he passed through them. And so this is a very good thing. They ended this very non-ethical practice, and it seemed that people were doing tshuva. But what happened? Many of the people didn't actually do it, and they forced people back into what we'll call servitude. And God came to Yirmiyahu and said, like, in a certain way, the people just sealed their fate. They had done tshuva, and now they renounced their tshuva through their actions. And basically, he warned them that, like, this is the end. Nebuchadnezzar is going to come and destroy everything. But at the end, the last verse, it's actually interesting, because it's everything I said now is from the 34th chapter. Here it goes back to the 33rd chapter and it repeats it. Because in most cases, the Haftarah is not going to end on a terrible note like this. God is saying everything is going to be destroyed, but there will still, and God says the cities of Yehuda will be desolate, but they go back and say that God says that if it wasn't for the covenant that I have made with the Jewish people, then this would be the end. But God is saying, even though measure for measure, there's going to be desolation and exile because of the actions of the people, God is saying, I will never break my covenant with the Jewish people. And in the end, I will bring everyone back and show them my mercy. That's how the Haftorah ends. So this is a classic example of no matter how much the prophets are warning and rebuking and telling them, you must change your ways. And if you don't, you're asking for desolation and destruction. It will always be followed by consolation, because God confirms his covenant repeatedly. Even though I'm going to send you into exile, I will bring you back at the appropriate time. So here we could see the subject material of the Haftarah is following directly from the opening of Parshat Mishpatim. And here, though, we see the result of not acting in a proper way, because here the people who are getting the benefit of the work, they actually have to be very nice to the people that are working for them. And in the 7th year, later in the Torah, it makes very clear, when they go what's called free, they go with many, many gifts, financial gifts. And so even though if you just read it in English, the whole practice is like, what is going on here? But hopefully the way that I explained it is it's not terribly different than what happens in contemporary society. It's not exactly the same, that's for sure, but there is a similarity here. And we also see from this Haftarah what happens when we don't act in a moral and ethical way.